Wow. Okay. So apparently, taking people from an airport, confining them to a hotel, charging them to stay there for 3 days might be considered illegal. That's right. Apparently, the Canadian government just last week issued if you come into Canada, you're returning back to Canada, if you're traveling to Canada, you're going to be taken to a hotel, you're going to be tested at the airport, taken to a hotel, you're going to wait there up to 3 days waiting for that test result at a cost of $2,000 or more per person until that test result comes in. And apparently, they've been inundated now, different lawyers and different associations and constitutional experts inundated with people saying, hey, this isn't right. First of all, basically, if you're rich, it doesn't matter because $2,000 if you're rich doesn't mean anything. So it's basically targeting poorer people who can't afford to pay the $2,000, backpackers, students. A lot of people have been calling in saying, hey, I visited the United States, or I visited this place because of my dying grandmother, or I had to go there on business, or I'm a student, or I'm burying a relative. I'm going to the United States for medical treatments. All kinds of different reasons that people had to travel, and all travel like that had been deemed unessential travel. It didn't matter if you were going for medical, it didn't matter if you're going to a funeral, it didn't matter. You were deemed non-essential travel. And the $2,000 hotel quarantine is going to be in effect for everybody. Well, it seems like some constitutional experts are all threatening legal action now against the Canadian government, saying it's forced confinement, it's arbitrary rules, it's a unmitigated burden on poorer people than richer people. It targets poorer people compared to people who can afford to do this. It is basically unconstitutional to take people forcibly and lock them up without arresting them. You can tell people they have to quarantine in home. We'll see. That's a different act altogether. That's a quarantine act, and there's a whole bunch of rules around that when they're allowed to institute that. But even that has limitations. You're only supposed to be able to do that for so long. It's not an open-ended law. It's not an open-ended quarantine act. They're not supposed to be able to quarantine you for 7 years. They can only quarantine you for a certain amount of time before they have to reenact it. So there's a check and balance in place to make sure what they're doing is proper and warranted, right? And so far, a lot of cases that have gone in Canada, United States, saying that restrictions have gone too far, they're arbitrary, they're not spread out evenly. They've all won. They've all beaten the governments in the United States and Canada, saying that they're unconstitutional, or they're just downright illegal or improperly written. So Canada's backed off on that now, but it's not over. They're rewording it and rewriting it, so they're hoping to have it in place for March break, and they're hoping to have it in place or Valentine's Day, which is coming up shortly. Well, you know what? You've already banned travel to Mexico. You've already banned travel to the Caribbean. If you're so worried about travel for, the spread and all this sort of thing, and traveling for spring break and everything, just temporarily ban all flights to Florida and California, United States. Just do that. This forcible confinement and new rules and all this other stuff, that really borders on illegal activity, borders on huge lawsuits. Especially if you forcibly take somebody and contain them in a hotel, and then you go to court and a judge basically says, you just kidnapped those people, or you arrested those people without arresting them and reading them their rights or giving them a charge of any kind. You see the difference? Where if you have all the right in the world to go to, hey, WestJet, hey, Air Canada, Transat, if you want any government assistance in the future because there's not much travel going on right now, maybe a 6-week ban on flights to southern United States. What do you think? What do you think, guys? It would happen overnight because the airlines are dying. They need some sort of influx of money from somewhere. And if it's not from tourists and travelers, they need to get it from the governments. And so, yeah, it's hilarious that the minute litigation was brought up, and not just one, we're talking dozens and dozens of different cases about to be charged against the Canadian government. So that is pretty hilarious that they didn't think that that would happen. That they were so naive to think that everyone would just lie down and say, oh, that's okay, that's a fair rule. Now, people are in favor of making sure people are quarantined when they get home. People are in favor of making sure people are tested before they get here. That sort of thing is fine. But to forcibly take somebody and lock them in a room for 3 days, that's getting to that line where people are going, that's and then you're going to charge them to do it, right? That's that line. That's that line that people apparently don't seem to want to cross. And so it's interesting to see what's going to happen in the future because, once the government announces it's going to do something, they can't backtrack. They can't say, you know what, we decided that we were wrong. You will never, in the history of governments, hear them come out and say, we were wrong. Ever. Right? Think back. You can impeach a president, and he just still would say he did nothing wrong, right? No government official is going to come out and say they were wrong, unless they get caught in the act of something and they're trying to save their job. But as far as a policy is concerned, you'll never hear the government say, you know what? We were completely wrong when we did that, so we're going to change that. You'll never hear it ever come out of a government official's mouth. Well, if you're coming back to Canada and you don't want to pay that $2,000, start heading here now because it's postponed indefinitely. But it still might happen.